Hello and welcome into the Bar Down Hockey Show. I'm Ethan Schmidt alongside Josh Zacklis and Liesl Babica. We got a big show today, lots of postseason talk. Wednesday, April 12th, the playoffs kicked off with 5 series beginning, and then Thursday night we have 3 more series starting for round 1 of the NHL playoffs. How are you guys feeling today?
Feeling pretty good. How about you, Ethan?
I'm great, man. I just want to shout out my longtime best friend in Nashville, Tennessee, going to tune in to today's show. Big shout out to Will Kennedy. Thanks for listening, bud. And so what'd you guys kind of summarize up from yesterday's games?
Well, there was definitely a lot of action yesterday, but I think let's actually start with ASU hockey. 'Cause, I mean, there was some pretty big news coming out of ASU hockey. I mean, let's start with that,
definitely.
And then let's move on.
Arizona State had the spring signing day yesterday as well, along with all the NHL playoff action. And the team signed Austin Lemieux, the son of Mario Lemieux, definitely
Liesl's
a legend for
with his
Liesl's
father's
favorite.
work.
I am.
How do you feel about that? I know you talked about it on a show before.
I think it's a really great recruit. I mean, even though he's not as good as his father, I think it will pull a lot of other kids come out here with the Lemieux name, and I think it will really help out with the recruiting. So I think it's a good ad for their team.
I think it gets a lot of eyes looking toward ASU, and Austin Lemieux being a part of the system also allows the legend Mario Lemieux to put a spot on ASU hockey as well. So pretty nice resource to have there for this up and coming fresh D1 team. And moving on, they signed Phillips Bonsis. He's going to make a big impact for the team. And then Dominic Garcia also signed, and then Gage Huff. So 4 new signees yesterday, but a total of 9 out of the whole year signed, along with Patrick Kula, Johnny Walker, Tyler Moppy, Vito Janssens, and Jacob Wilson. So some impact players coming already. And the Sun Devils will have their second full NCAA division season next fall. So how do you guys feel about their chances next season with the new recruits coming in?
I think it always takes a couple of years for coaches to get everything figured out. Obviously, ASU coach Greg Powers, he's been in control of this team for a while. But I think usually, I know in basketball, it usually takes about like 3 or 4 years for a new coach to really get their system in and to really get used to a team. And even though
Greg Powers has been around for a long time, but it's the first year for D1. So I mean, it's more like the Penn State look for hockey. They've done well, and they made it into the playoffs this year for the NCAA. So hopefully ASU will be looking into the playoffs for next year and be like the NHL in their playoffs in the postseason.
I'm not sure about next year, but I think definitely when we're all juniors in 2 more years, ASU hockey should definitely be looking towards the NCAA tournament, advancing probably at least to the second, maybe even third round in the NCAA tournament. Playoffs next year would be really something really special.
Well, what I think is really cool is that the team is bringing on a lot of international players, like Phillips Bonsis is coming from Latvia, and he's the second Latvian on the team, along with Vito Janssens, who signed in the fall signing day. So pretty cool that Greg Powers is getting out there, not like beyond nationally, and it definitely brings a lot of culture to ASU hockey as well. So
Yeah.
Pretty exciting there.
And Latvia, that's in Europe, right?
Yeah.
You know who else is in Europe? Or is from Europe? Henrik Lundqvist.
Ooh.
Henrik Lundqvist is not from Latvia, he's from Sweden, though, I believe.
I believe.
And
You're
correct.
uneducated.
I'm pretty sure he's from Sweden. And he shut out the Montreal Canadiens yesterday.
Pretty cool.
2-0 for the Rangers. And even though I sound excited about that, I'm actually really sad. Because I'm a big Islanders fan, and any Rangers win is a loss for me.
You take the L, bud. You take the L.
You
No,
are.
I was kind of surprised. I'm gonna be honest. We'll get to our brackets in a little bit, but I did pick the Rangers to win. But I didn't think that Montreal would get shut out at home in Game 1. Pretty big.
Well, I think there's 3 things when it comes to playoff hockey. 3 things. Playoff hockey is a different breed than regular hockey. I mean, if you watch
You're
any of
damn
those
right.
games last night, it was like nuts. Second of all, the fans, it's a whole different area. I mean, if you watched any part of the Edmonton Oilers and San Jose Sharks game, almost everyone in the stands had an Oilers jersey on. I mean, that's almost like the Calgary Flames, known for having all their red jerseys on during regular season games. But this is playoff hockey. And third, and lastly, I believe that what makes the team is the goalie. Because, you have a great offense, you have good defense, but at the end of the day, if your goalie can't come and compete, then you're screwed. And from what we saw yesterday, it was close games every single game. 2 games went in overtimes, and that has to do with the way the goaltenders play.
Well, yeah, you're definitely right. I mean, whoever has the hot goaltender, or even just experienced, and Henrik Lundqvist is definitely that guy. He's been there, done that. Still chasing to raise the cup, but he's been there numerous times. He knows how to get to that Stanley Cup final stage. So the playoffs is nothing new for him. Pretty exciting that he did get that shutout. I know it definitely means a lot to him, and it definitely gives the Rangers a lot of momentum going forward.
It was a pretty physical game last night for sure, and the Canadians were not happy. I mean, if you were listening in, they were booing and hissing, so they were pretty into it, and I think that's a really hard environment for any American team to go into the Canadian turf and go and play at home for the first 2 games, because those Canadians, they can get nasty because they love their hockey.
So do you think the Canadians can bounce back?
I think if they win tomorrow, their second game, and I think if they win their third game, I think they could be, because then after that they'll be back into Montreal after games 3 and 4. So I think they have a good chance. I'm kind of bummed that they didn't win last night, because I think if Montreal would have won the first 2 games of the series, I think the Rangers would have been done.
Well, moving on to the next series, another Canadian team lost in the first game of the 2017 Stanley Cup playoffs. Boston topped Ottawa 2-1, and Boston now leads the series 1-0. What were your thoughts on that game, guys?
Well, Boston, again, they snuck into the playoffs. I think they're going to be a dangerous team. Even though I didn't really pick them to go too far in my bracket, I do think they're going to be a little bit of a dangerous team. I thought they were going to be a little bit more dangerous as the last wild card spot, because I think that 8 versus 1 matchup is always a challenge. But playing Ottawa, now that it's a division rival and they're playing a Canadian team,
it was huge for them to get it.
That's a huge win. Whenever you're the road team, winning a game, the first game on the road, is probably your most important win. If you can win the first game on the road, game 2 really is.
Impressive.
I mean, frankly, it's not that important. I mean, taking 2 games on the road in an NHL playoff series, the first 2 games, that's almost impossible. So if you can take 1 and being the first game,
you're almost halfway there.
Yeah, a split on the road to start the series is always a great sign, and the Rangers and the Bruins are able to do that. I noticed that that Boston they were able to just get hot at the right time, and they were able to get and they no longer have to face such a tough task in Washington. They're now playing Ottawa. Ottawa is quiet this season. They're possible contenders, but people don't really hear a whole lot of noise from Ottawa. So I was thinking Boston coming hot. I picked them to win over Ottawa as well. But moving on to our next series, we have Liesel's favorite team, Pittsburgh Penguins. They ousted the Blue Jackets 3-1 last night in Pittsburgh. And what do you think about your team's performance, Lisa?
Well, I mean, I didn't really notice until you mentioned it. Murray was out. He got injured in pregame practice right before warm-ups. So Fleury actually stepped in, and I told Ethan last night, I feel, even though Fleury has had his ups and downs in the playoffs in the last, good couple of years, I think it's really positive to bring him in there, and then on top of that, he gets the 3-1 win, which is absolutely phenomenal, and it helps boost the confidence of the team. That first period, I was a little iffy because the Blue Jackets, they had tons and tons of shots on the Penguins. I think it was like 16-3 Blue Jackets.
Yeah.
And so it was just like a little,
a little uneasy.
But it was a really fast-paced game, and I think the Blue Jackets are one of the few teams out in the league that can actually keep up with the Penguins' pace, because they are a pacey team. For not having a bunch of young players, they are very pacey. But I am glad that they pulled out. Brian Rust had the first goal, and then Phil Kessel had that one, and then Nick Nobino.
Phil.
Yeah, he had a
so many
night.
good things to say about Phil.
Oh yeah.
Phil Kessel showed up yesterday, just top right cheddar over Bobrovsky. Beautiful shot to get that second goal, and he was a really big part of that win. I gotta give a shout out to Phil. Very impressive performance from you, bud.
And I mean, we've been talking about Bobrovsky the entire year. We've been talking about how just outstanding he's been. He's been absolutely outstanding, and to score against him 3 times is just incredible.
And like I mentioned before on my list of 3 things, the goalie has to come to play.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he was hanging on for a while, and then he just couldn't do it. And the Blue Jackets, they couldn't do it either. And, I hope it's a good game tomorrow night. But I think if the Blue Jackets don't win tomorrow night, I think they'll be really hurting for the series overall.
Well, I'm sorry, Josh, you can go. Well, I was just going to say that I was noticing that the Penguins are really selective, and it worked out in their favor. We've seen it all year. The Penguins are so good at tic-tac-toe. Sid the Kid, always having beautiful passes. Phil got involved. Brian Rust crashing the net, getting that first goal to get things going. Just, they're all on the same page, and it's really scary to see a team with so much chemistry. And it was we said that the Blue Jackets were quadrupling them in shots, but they were selective. They attacked. They got it done when they wanted to, and that was really impressive.
Well, and when the Blue Jackets had the power play in the first period towards the end, I mean, the Penguins defense, that was the best I've seen them all season. I mean, they were on ultimate lockdown, and it reminded me when we played, good high school teams, and you played a 4-5-1, and you jammed the midfield up for those players not to get by, and that's what the Penguins did. They, kept people under control, and they didn't let anything happen. What do you think, Josh?
Yeah, and Lisa, obviously going back to your soccer days there in high school.
Right.
But I think one of the keys for the Penguins, if they can take the second game at home, this series could really easily be over in 5 games. I mean, going down 2-0, even though you're going back to home for the Blue Jackets, I mean, you're probably going to split with the Penguins anyway. The Penguins are probably going to take a game on the road. Now they're up 3-1. They're going back home for a game. And the Penguins, they're a good team. We can't forget they won the Stanley Cup playoffs last year. They're an experienced playoff team. And good experienced playoff teams do not miss chances to clinch series at home. So
I agree.
It could very easily be over in 5 games.
Yeah, I mean, the Blue Jackets, I noticed they just got to figure out how to score. They got to figure out how to put the puck in the back of the net. We already mentioned the shots twice. I mean, 16 shots or more in the first period. You gotta capitalize. And I think going forward, this team's got to play desperate. They just got to get the puck in the back of the net in game 2.
And Marc-Andre Fleury will be starting tomorrow night.
He's definitely the go-to now.
Yeah,
I would say
he has to be, at least for this series, and move on and see what.
Because Columbus didn't score till late in the third.
I think you just go with the hot hand. I think as soon as you find a goalie, even if it's not the goalie you expected, if like the Penguins, they expected they're going to go in with Murray, but something happened. Now Fleury's back in. You just keep going with Fleury. You go with Fleury until he loses like a game or 2 in a row, and then you say, all right, you're out. Murray's in.
And we'll see, because it's still undecided of how long Murray will be out. I mean, this could be a season-ending injury. You don't know. I mean, nobody knows. So it's going to be one of those things. However, we'll move on to the St. Louis Blues and the Minnesota Wild. First of 2 games that went into overtime last night. What do you guys think about that game?
I got to say, Jake Allen was incredible. He stood on his head. Big reason why the Blues got that win.
Yeah, I didn't watch the games last night. I wasn't feeling 100%, so I tried to stay out of Lisa and Ethan's room so they'd be good to go. But I got some Dayquil in me, so I'm ready to go. But yeah, I think I saw some highlights on Twitter.
You did.
Of Jake Allen just making some acrobatic saves.
Yeah, he was all over the place. Great movement in the crease. Being acrobatic when you needed to. I think that's a huge part of postseason play as a goaltender. You're going to have to be acrobatic. You're going to have to put it all on the line, and I think Jake Allen really did that. I got to be honest, I thought Jake was going to be really suspect going into this series. The Blues kind of bounced back and forth between goaltenders this year, but he really stepped up, and it was impressive for me.
I would say it was another pretty even game.
All around, sure.
But the issue is when it comes to even games, and then you could go into 7-game series, okay? You go in overtime. That's not anything. I mean, nobody wants to go in overtime in playoff hockey. I'm just gonna put that out there. It's the honesty of life, and that nobody scored a goal until like 3 or 4 minutes left in the overtime, and that's almost a whole fourth other period, and that can be hurtful when you're going, game after game, back to back to back.
Absolutely, but I mean, to be fair, the Kings did win the cup 2-3 years ago after going 7 games in the first round and the second round.
It's true.
They won the cup, and they might have had home ice advantage against the Rangers
when
won
they won
the
cup.
President's.
They were the 8th seed.
Yeah,
remember that?
Yeah, and then the Rangers, I believe, won the President's Trophy. So yeah, it's tough, but teams have done it in the past. I think we were just talking about Jake Allen being an acrobatic goalie, and I don't know if we're going to get to it anytime soon. But again, we still have to have a discussion. What's a more important position? Goaltender for a hockey team or quarterback for a football team? Just stuff to think about as this NHL playoffs goes along. But I think there was one more series yesterday, Ethan.
Yeah, just want to say Devin Dubnyk was on the other end for Minnesota. He had a great game as well. Just not able to, the Wild just not able to capitalize against Allen was a big part of why St. Louis got that. But then going on the next series, it also went overtime. The San Jose Sharks were able to steal one on the road in a hostile Edmonton environment. 3-2, big win for San Jose.
Well, if you saw any of the highlights or even saw any of the game last night, the Oilers were up 2-0, I believe. And you want to win games, you need to keep the other team off the board. Let alone let them come back and score 3 goals. Given they went into overtime, but still, you're winning the game. You can't let that happen. And I think that comes from inexperience from the Oilers team because they,
That's true.
lack of experience.
Well, Connor McDavid was able to get his first point of his postseason career. Pretty cool. But yeah, lack of experience. The Sharks have been there. Couture put a mask on, put the cage on his helmet, came out to play, even though he took a puck off his face a few weeks back. Came out there, decided to be a leader. It's postseason hockey. Pretty cool. And then Pavelski and Bernsey, they stepped up for their team. Even Joel Ward, ex-Predator, he's always been dangerous in the playoffs. He was able to get the scoring going for the Sharks for them to get some momentum.
Well, and then, you talk about ex-players, Martin, he was able to put a goal in the third period for them, and that really helped out a lot because that was a game-tying goal. And so if you can't get that game-tying goal, you can't move on to try to win the game.
Absolutely. And just a little bit of history for you. It's absolutely incredible that the Sharks were able to pull out the road when considering the Oilers haven't been in the playoffs since 2005-2006 season. And just to give you an idea of how long ago that was, they won the conference finals, lost in the Stanley Cup finals, but they beat the Mighty Ducks in the conference finals. Not the Ducks, the Mighty Ducks.
The Mighty Ducks.
That's really good history. That's going way back. But, you mentioned the hostile environment last night in Edmonton, and I got to hand it to San Jose. You go look back and look at those highlights or have watched the game. It was crazy. Those fans were out of their seats the majority of the game, and they were, trying to make as much noise as possible to shut those Sharks up.
They were.
Oh, you go ahead, Josh.
I was just going to say, on PTI today, they were discussing the concourse tickets for the Oilers, because they sold tickets basically for standing room, $80.
Wow. See, being in the playoffs for the first time in such a long time, people are going to show up. So that it's really good and kind of bad at the same time. Obviously ticket prices are going to skyrocket, but that place is going to be full and rocking. So, but some stats for this series I want to point out. The Sharks outshot the Oilers 44-19, and the Sharks went on the power play 6 times as opposed to only 3 for Edmonton. So the Oilers definitely have to get something going on offense if they want to win the series. They were able to capitalize early, but the Sharks were able to battle back with bad penalties from the Oilers, and the Oilers not getting shots on goal.
I agree. Well, Thursday night, because we are on an odd, the Easter weekend, so we're not doing a show on Sunday. This makes up for it. But tonight's games, we have 3 series games: the Toronto Maple Leafs and the Washington Capitals, the Nashville Predators, Ethan's team, and the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Calgary Flames and the Anaheim Ducks. What are your guys' thoughts for tonight's games?
So I guess let's start with Toronto and Washington. I think this is going to be a very interesting series because right now you have 2 really young players in the NHL. You have Connor McDavid and Austin Matthews. So we've been talking the past couple of weeks. Connor McDavid is kind of looking like a young Sidney Crosby. So does that mean Austin Matthews is maybe a young Alexander Ovechkin? And if that's the case, there he's playing against the older
That is pretty cool.
OG Alexander Ovechkin, if you will.
I think you're right. I think it'll be a very, very interesting series, and I think tonight's game will set the tone for what the rest of the series will be like. I mean, does Toronto hang in there? Does Toronto pull out the win? Do the Capitals, shove 4 goals in the back of the net right away? I mean, what happens? I mean, I honestly think out of all the games in the playoffs, I think this is the one that could be most up in the air.
I mean, it's tough to say. Austin Matthews making his first ever playoff appearance as a rookie, had an amazing regular season, and then you're right, going up against Alexander Ovechkin, who kind of took a back seat this season. I think we noticed all throughout the year that he wasn't one of the leaders. He wasn't like in the top 10 so much with points this season as he usually is. So I think he kind of took a backseat role, become more of a facilitator on the ice than always trying to be the last one to touch the puck. And it definitely showed that it was better for the Capitals, winning the President's Trophy. And I think we have to see what's going to happen with that in the playoffs. Obviously, previous seasons, the Capitals struggling to win in the playoffs, and Ovechkin leading them in points, but not this season. So I'm really curious to see how that works in the postseason.
Oh, I agree, because you mentioned they win the President's Trophy. Do they keep it up, or do they crash and burn? I mean, like I mentioned before, this series is completely up in the air. It's in the hands of the players at this point. They can do whatever they want. But first game, I believe that's on tonight, or the one that's I guess most important to the group of 3 of us in here, is Nashville Predators and Chicago Blackhawks. Now, Ethan, I've heard that the Predators could pull out against the Blackhawks. What do you think about that?
Well, my team's not going to back down. They're not scared of Chicago. Patrick Kane and his greasy mullet, and Jonathan Taylor's. Nah, I'm just playing. But seriously, the Predators are not a bad team. I think they had a lot of problems winning in regulation this year. A lot of bad OT shootout losses. Not able to get all the points that they really deserve. So they got stuck with that last spot in the West. But Chicago, they're really familiar with Chicago. It's going to be Subban's first time suiting up in the postseason for the Predators. It's going to be a battle back and forth. And I think if the Predators come out, smash Chicago in the mouth, show them they're not scared, and take it to this team that they could pull out a win tonight and really set the tone for the series for potentially upsetting the favorites of winning the Western Conference in the Blackhawks.
Absolutely. We're going to see 2 very interesting games tonight with Toronto and Washington, Nashville and Chicago.
Yeah, 1 versus 8.
And a lot of times, at least in the NBA, you have 1 versus 8. One just kind of glides through. No issue. I know last year we had Golden State Warriors just absolutely destroy.
Well, I remember, I know what you're saying.
But in hockey, it can be
anybody.
It's completely up in the air. And there's no gliding through the first round for these teams.
No, it's not. And then finally, the last Canadian team that is in the playoffs for this season are the Calgary Flames and the Anaheim Ducks. Where are we going here?
Both these teams have kind of flown under the radar. No pun intended for the Ducks there. But Calgary is a young team. Calgary is a very young team. They're just as young as Edmonton. They don't have the stars that Edmonton has in McDavid, but they're still a good team. They're still a young team. And maybe Anaheim wins this one because they have a little bit more playoff experience. But I think this is huge, a huge building block for Calgary. I don't think a lot of people saw them making the playoffs this year. And the fact that they were able to make it, and maybe if they can push this game 6-7 games, that's going to provide some motivation for next year.
Well, this series is interesting. Calgary and Anaheim, familiar faces to each other. But the biggest stat, Calgary has lost 27 straight games at the Honda Center. So Calgary, if they want even a chance in this series, they have to split in Anaheim. And history shows it's going to be really hard for them. It's just the outcome looks very, very skim for the Flames. I really love what Johnny Gaudreau is able to do. If he could come out with a lot of passion, lead his team, it could be a different story. But it's going to be tough for me not to think that the Ducks have an easy have an easy pass on this one.
Well, I mean, I know that we're in playoffs, guys, but for some other teams, summer season, not postseason, the summer season and off season have already started for them, and that's already started because the Dallas Stars have hired Ken Hitchcock as a brand new coach, and he won a Stanley Cup with them in 1999, and so now he's back for round 2. What do you guys think about that?
Well, I think the Dallas Stars have potential to be very scary next season. Ken Hitchcock is a great coach. We talked about it in a show earlier on this year that he was able to win 2/3 of his games with the Blues, but the Blues decided to let him go. I think the Dallas Stars have a real big pickup, and it'll be interesting because they're in the same division, so they're going to play. Ken's going to play his ex-team quite a few times during the regular season, and they could even, with the way the playoff format is, that the new format is, they can even play each other in the playoffs next season.
I think it's a good pickup for the Stars. I think, adding Hitchcock back into the roster, you have Jamie Benn, the captain, and then Tyler Seguin and Jason Spezza, and then Dan Hammes as defenseman. I think he's got a pretty stacked team. I think, as you mentioned, the Anaheim Ducks and Calgary Flames, they both flew under the radar, and I think the Dallas Stars might be one of those teams the next couple years.
Absolutely, and a few other coaching changes. So, Gerard Gallant is named the first coach of the Las Vegas Golden Knights. He's going to lead the Knights out to their inaugural season next year, and obviously this team is not a playoff team, but it's going to be really interesting. It's not very often that as a coach you get to really start from scratch. When you come to a rebuilding team, you basically get to start from scratch. Gallant is going to have the rare opportunity to literally build this team.
I think he can do whatever he wants with it, to be honest with you. If you don't know who he is, he previously coached the Columbus Blue Jackets and the Florida Panthers. He was fired by Florida, I believe, 2 years ago now. So I think he can pick up wherever he wants to go. The owner of the Golden Knights said he thinks that the team will make playoffs within 3 years from starting up next year, and they'll win the Stanley Cup within 6. And I think that's pretty ballsy to come out and say, to be honest with you. So we'll see how that goes.
That's very ambitious.
But you have to remember that they do have the draft.
They're gonna steal some low key quality players,
and that's the thing that
other teams.
People don't like about expansion draft. But hey, I think he has a good point. If he can pull out good players from the expansion draft, I think he could have a very successful team.
Well, hey, you guys wanna discuss our brackets? We put them on the Twitter page.
We did put them on the Twitter page.
Maybe we give the fans a little bit of quick insight of why.
Let's give them a quick insight because we only have 2 minutes left. We'll go into the brackets a little bit more in depth later, but I guess we can just go through the highlights right now.
Well, you picked Washington. Why?
I picked Washington because I felt that they really ran into a lot of trouble in the second round, and they've stood in their own way. And I think one of the most dangerous teams are teams that have only been held back by standing in their own way. So I think that Washington is a threat to win it, and I think they're gonna win it, and I think they're gonna I think they're gonna win. I have them facing Edmonton. I think Edmonton's gonna come out. I think they're gonna come out with a lot of energy, and I think they're gonna find a way to beat Chicago in the conference finals because that's who they're gonna see there. I just think the Capitals are a better team than them.
What do you think? I mean, you picked the Capitals as well, Ethan.
Well, for me, it's now or never for the Capitals. It's not that I wanted to really pick them, but if they don't win this year, I mean, my goodness, what is up with the franchise? It's just gonna crumble. You're gonna lose fans. There's something going on with upper management. It's the coaching or the players.
I think it's very clear that Barry Trotz is coaching for his job right now.
I mean,
I would agree with you.
I don't know if it is Barry though. You go out and win the President's Trophy back to back. Like, come on, you gotta win the cup. That's why I'm saying it's now or never. And the team, if they lose, they're gonna just get picked apart in free agency, lose fans, and something's up that they have to figure out because it's just quite frankly embarrassing.
Ethan, I know Barry Trotz is a great coach, but I think if you were behind the bench of that team, I think they'd be contenders to win the President's Trophy. And I know I'm not trying to say like you have no knowledge about hockey. You do, but you don't have any experience coaching hockey, and I think you could coach the Capitals to a President's Trophy win. I think their team is that good, and it doesn't take that much coaching talent to bring the Capitals to a President's Trophy.
Well, Lisa picked her favorite team in the Penguins.
You know, I really hate to be the hometown bias person. I really do, because I try not to be a cocky person in general, but, you know, I just want to mention that the Penguins, you said before in this show earlier on, that the Penguins are really scary and how good their chemistry is when they come out and play
It's
teams.
beautiful.
And it is. It's a great way to watch hockey. And I think they are in it to win back-to-back years. And I think that'll be a very difficult task, but I think they can pull it out. And I have them playing Chicago Blackhawks in the Stanley Cup Finals. I think the Blackhawks can pull through on the west side. You know, but I really think they do have a chance to be that successful. So.
All right, well, that's our show for today. Thanks for listening in, and we'll have to see what happens in this exciting 2017 NHL playoffs.
See what happens. Follow the show on Twitter, BDH_show. You can follow me on Twitter at Josh Zackles.
You can follow me at Liesel_Lee.
And me at D. Ethan Schmidt.
And make sure to tune in, because this is the end of the school year, so we have only 3 or 4 more shows left, so keep tuning in.
Absolutely. And this is Bar Down Hockey.